Good afternoon, everybody, and happy rainy Tuesday. Welcome to the next of our Essential series. I'm Lottie, founder of the Juris Society. We bring women wealth holders and their advisors together through education, connection, and collaboration through our 3 pillars of women, wealth, and well-being. This afternoon, we're really pleased to invite Anna Josse, founder and CEO of Prism the Gift Fund, to dive into the critical role of major donors in sustaining and scaling charitable work, the mechanics and elegance of donor-advised funds, and how they are reshaping the way philanthropy is done. We'll also be celebrating 20 years of Prism the Gift Fund and explore how the organisation has facilitated over $1 billion worth of charitable giving, with 600 million already distributed, and why Prism is at the forefront of enabling strategic, tax-efficient and impactful philanthropy on a global scale. Please note this is for education purposes only, and if you do have any questions though, please do ask them in the chat or reach out to myself or Anna directly. So I'm just going to get Anna on now. Hi Anna, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
How are you?
On a rainy day.
Yeah, it's a bit rainy, but never mind. We'll bring the sunshine. So, before we get started, could you tell us a little bit about who you are and why you do what you do?
Yes, so I am, as you said, founder and CEO of Prism the Gift Fund. And I saw these structures back in the 90s in America and started to do some research early 2000s as to what existed in the United Kingdom and what a donor advised fund was, and set up Prism the Gift Fund in 2005. His objective was to deal with the mid upper end of the market and offer a really personalized, swift, efficient, and pretty entrepreneurial service for donors making very significant gifts tax effectively all over the world. And 20 years on, that objective remains exactly the same.
Well, incredible, and incredible that you're really the pioneer in this space now across the whole of the UK and on a global scale, let's say. But how, in these 20 years or so, have you really seen the philanthropic landscape evolve? And what do you think the most urgent shifts are that we should be responding to today?
So the old concept, my fluffy white charity that I run on the side, is very different. Setting up a charity, running a charitable endeavor is complex. There are a lot of rules and regulations. We're dealing with a charity commission that I think is probably very different to 20 years ago. And navigating the compliance and the governance is not easy. And so that is what something like Prism will bring to a client, to allow them to have the joy of giving without the worry and the legal costs of having to create their own entity. So I think that's a big shift, the professionalizing and then really understanding what it means to run a charity. You know, today you need policies in place, safeguarding, trustees need to be trained. These are complex areas to navigate. Led on top of developing rules and regulations, as we're all subject to across, you know, all different sector areas, we're living in a very complex world. We're dealing with famine, wars in the United Kingdom specifically, but elsewhere, cost of living crisis, government cuts. So what is the role of philanthropy in all of that? And you know, what role do charities have that perhaps government's no longer providing? So I think increasingly complex, trying to assess and navigate effective use of money as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that you make there about how governments are maybe not equipped or able to tackle some of these major global problems. And I was actually at a lunch the other day where somebody said, you know, why do we need philanthropists? And actually, we do, because they bring out the models to show that it can be done, and they're willing to take those risks to provide solutions, but they need that infrastructure, which is where Prism comes in to provide that infrastructure for innovation to support these charities. So I think that's super, super exciting and critical at this stage. But what do you think are some of the common misconceptions that philanthropists have when they first consider major giving, and how can advisors or intermediaries help to overcome this?
So I think sometimes when we deal with a family office, they may have perhaps a corporate American lawyer as part of a team. But philanthropy and charitable giving in the United Kingdom is a specialized subject. So a very smart corporate American lawyer may not have the skills for that family office to understand quite what it means setting up a charity and what the best structure is for that family or that individual. So the more the wealth intermediary sector understands and knows of donor advised funds, the more they can suggest it as an option. It may not be right for everyone, but increasingly one has to wonder, if you were creating your own grant-making foundation or operational charity, it will cost you tens of thousands of pounds, and it could take the commission maybe up to a year to grant charitable status. It can take the banking system a year. So these are all challenges that one needs to understand and weigh up what is the best structure. And you know, one of the trustees of Prism always says, you know what, you're listed as like the 80th, 85th largest charity in the United Kingdom that no one has heard of. It's, you know, well done. And it's the challenge of getting out what is a donor advised fund and how pertinent and relevant it is today, for increasingly for people, so they don't have to create their own structures.
Well, I think that's really a really good opportunity for you to explain very clearly what is a donor advised fund then.
Thank you. So we are a UK registered charity. And rather than a high net worth individual create their own grant making foundation, they open an account at Prism the Gift Fund and label it. They can call it the Joe Bloggs Foundation. It can appear like a foundation. They can be listed in the National Theatre brochure. They can be, their name is on a plaque in the National Gallery or whatever it is they may be supporting. But we are the regulatory roof. So they make a gift. It could be cash, shares, property, all of which come with charitable tax breaks, to Prism, open an account. They have a very personalized service, and they suggest where they give around the world. In addition, a lot of people come to us from the wealth investment management sector, and their personal wealth will sit with a particular bank, and they'll want their account at Prism to be managed by that bank. So currently, if you look at our accounts, we have about £350 million, £400 million across 40 investment managers. It is donor suggested, and we're very agnostic. So that donor balance of assets can sit wherever they would like.
That's really interesting. And can you give a little bit of an idea and an illustration on the framework of what are these managers managing? You know, once they're in the structure, what does that look like?
So each client, again, their portfolio may be slightly different. So let's say someone gives $1 million or 5 million or 10 million to Prism. Let's say they give cash, where they're going to gift aid against that if they assign a gift aid for. So, you know, 10 million, we've got another 2.5 million in their account. And they may say, you know what, in year one, I'm going to distribute £500,000 to the following 10 charities, 20 charities. Some will be UK, some will be overseas. Overseas gifting is more complex, but obviously we do that too. And they'll say, I'm going to have a balance of 12 million, and I'd like it to sit in a certain portfolio in a certain bank. And that portfolio may change, and Prism may have a number of clients with a particular bank, and each portfolio is managed in a slightly different way with a different structure, because the donor and the manager have slightly different ideas. It's all signed off by the Finance and Investment Committee of the board of Prism, because ultimately it's Prism is the legal and regulatory structure making the decision. But again, it's donor suggested. It's really very easy. You can set up a donor-advised fund in 2 days, as opposed to a year, and £30,000 later creating your own grant-making foundation, just for starters. And in the end, the other point you made, what's changed is navigating the compliance and governance. And we bring that expertise. We now have increasing expertise around understanding and navigating, getting reporting from charities, going into appropriate grant agreements. If we're gifting overseas, one applies that gift according to UK charitable law. So we need proposals, reporting, and that's everything we will do. So really the donor has the comfort that it's all very professionalized, but the joy of giving. The other thing that's happening with the donor advised fund world, because of the media and social media, is sometimes individuals, families, foundations are targeted by the media. You then have a layer of reputational risk to be concerned about. You can take a portion of your foundation, and some foundations also run donor advised funds. And when they run it through a donor advised fund, there's privacy, anonymity. So you can't see what's coming in, and you can't necessarily see what's going out. So that can protect a family reputational risk. Or indeed, we had another case where a family had family members that were not trustees who were not happy and kept complaining about the output of the foundation. And in the end, they said, you know what, let's just actually create a DAF instead. And then we can't be judged. We can't, people can't complain about what we're doing.
I think that's brilliant, especially, in times of economic uncertainty, having that speed and efficiency where you can be reactive to what is happening on the ground, some emergency that is somewhere else in the world. You've already got your deposit on account effectively, exactly. And you can distribute it to firefight as and where you need to.
And look, as I'm talking, I can hear someone say, well, how about transparency? How about all of that? Mm-hmm. Well, Prism does try and be pretty transparent. In our accounts, we list every charity around the world that gets a grant of £50,000 plus. We don't have to. There are no rules around that, but we do want to be transparent. We create an impact and output summary report on top of our annual accounts to show the impact and output every year. So last year we distributed almost £70 million around the world, last year alone, really looking at some concrete examples of where money's going. So the notion that DAFs are all very, very, private, they're private to protect the donor, but actually we try and be, where we can, open in terms of distribution.
That's fantastic. And I think as well, it's worth us talking about this unrestricted giving and the benefits of that and what DAFs actually do to support that.
So, I guess, again, there's complexity in the market around restricted gifts and unrestricted gifts. Interesting enough, during COVID, the Charity Commission sort of came out with soundings and briefings and letters encouraging donors. Let's say people were supporting events that were no longer happening, or very specific programs that couldn't happen. They said, don't put your money, charities still need your money. If you have a good relationship with them, just give them the money. Give it for core costs. Allow a charity to know how to utilize your money best. And often that's what I say to a donor. If you like a charity, they know better than you how to utilize your money. They have the experience in terms of knowing their output. And then conversely, what I say to a charity is you need to learn how to navigate major donors. A lot of our UK charities have historically been very good at direct mail government grants, but they're cuts all over the place. So who's going to fill the gap? And I think it's major donors that are going to fill the gap. But in order to learn how to navigate them, you need to get to know them. You need to ask them for money. And it's hard. It takes a long time. And we need to train, or I think fundraisers and charities really need to learn the skill of major donor fundraising. That's something positive we could learn from America.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and there is, there are some positives coming out of America. Let's say. But what lessons have Prism learned about that intersection then of professional advisory services and donor intent that others could benefit from? Because, as you say, there is a lot to be learned. But are there any tips or anything that you might like to share?
Well, we do work a lot with the private client industry of, banks and law firms, and we go in and we educate about philanthropy and what is a donor advised fund and how does it differ to a foundation and all the tax breaks associated with it. And again, the lesson from America and from that world is without question they talk about philanthropy to their clients and it opens up doors. Now here, again, we're more reticent. It's developing. But I think there was a talk, and it's not happening, but maybe it will in the future, for the Financial Conduct Authority to actually have a module on philanthropy, a compulsory module for those that become FCA regulated. And they could then roll out philanthropy. So it's not happening. But the fact is, all the investment managers in the private client world we work with that talk about philanthropy, usually it opens up a client. It's a different conversation. It's often a broader conversation, and they just end up with more work or more assets to look after. It's a sort of win-win all round. And so we are very much encouraging that whole world to engage in philanthropy, understand the tax breaks, and encourage it.
Yeah, well, fantastic. And I guess, what has really underpinned your approach to effective giving? You've raised over $1 billion. That's incredible. And distributed $600 million. What have really been your core principles then over the last 20 years, which is such a significant achievement?
The objective I stated at the beginning remains exactly the same today. It works. It's a very, very clear vision. It's a very clear ethos. It's a very personalized service. I know what we do, and we do it really well. And I guess that experience and reputation has just continued to grow. Look, it takes time, and I faced no's and maybes as I built. And you've got to be really resilient in any world where you're raising money, whether it's financial or philanthropy. You've got to be strong and resilient, and it takes time. But actually, we know what we do. Sometimes we'll have a structure, and they go out and they do create their own entity, and then they'll say, "Will you do the compliance and governance for us?" And I say, "No, that's not what Prism does. We do it for our own structure." And people say, "Well, why wouldn't you do that? You could charge money for that." Because don't put me on a sidetrack, right? So that's the other thing, being really focused and very clear about one's objective and not getting pulled into another direction.
I could learn a lot.
I do meet charities a lot because we assess them, we look at them, but my job is to build Prism. So my priority has to be to meet with donors, prospects, private client intermediaries. That has to be my prospect. And otherwise I won't be building the business. I won't be building the charity.
Well, exactly. And the more you do, the more you can do for others as well. And they know how, A, the reputation, but B, the efficiency of what you're doing and the infrastructure that you have built, which actually leads nicely on to something new that you guys have just launched with your partnership. Do you want to share a little bit about Myriad Alliance?
Yes, thank you. So we've talked about this complex world that is changing. There are, movements of people. We know a lot of the res non-doms in the United Kingdom have moved out, a lot have moved to Europe, and we're aware that quite a few Americans are moving into the United Kingdom. So the Myriad Alliance is a global partnership. It's in America, Canada, Europe, Asia, China, Singapore, really looking at cross-border giving and facilitating the ability of someone sitting in another jurisdiction to be able to route in. So we've just had a case where we've got a parent living in the UK with UK tax, but children in Australia. And they want to be able to capture both Australian tax, British tax, and run a DAF at Prism. So we'll be able to do that through the Myriad Alliance. So it's capturing wherever someone may be sitting. And also, perhaps when we make a gift, for example, to an American charity, due diligence could be complex. And we'll say to Myriad America, do you know this charity? Have you already done the due diligence? So we can support one another as well with just, you know, general charitable endeavors, rather than just all working independently and, you know, looking at a whole global map and trying to look at what that means. And then,
well, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say on the back of Myriad, what we're capturing as well is this movement of Americans into the UK. And we're white labeling a dual qualified structure. And basically that gives individuals who pay tax in the UK, tax in America, the ability to capture both gift aid and a charitable tax deduction in America. And, you know, there are a couple of people in the market that already do that. But really, we want to be able to offer it. And so there'll be a whole slew of private client intermediaries that service Americans that we'll now want to meet with.
Well, that's going to be a huge and exciting opportunity there, and you're going to be so busy over the next.
Yeah, no, I know. It's really, as the world develops or changes, you know, whether it's, you know, an earthquake that we want to respond quickly to, or the movement of people, or COVID, that is something Prism does incredibly well. In fact, one of the examples I've used before is there's a great guy who actually was at the gala called Leon Arts, who created a project in COVID called Kitchens with Compassion. Wembley Stadium was closed. They gave him the kitchens, and he made 625,000 meals for the NHS and vulnerable under Prism in that first year of COVID. So I'd get a call saying, you know, tomatoes to your office. I went, no. The tomatoes to Wembley, please, and the bill to Prism. So Prism provided his regulatory roof. He tax effectively raised money from lots of donors, and we then paid the suppliers, but he raised the money and made the food and distributed it.
That is just,
we responded really quickly to enable him to do that.
That is just brilliant. That's so heartwarming as well, just thinking you were such a catalyst for that to be able to take action. Yeah. I love that. Gosh, amazing. Are there any, what do you think are the key areas of philanthropy that people are really focusing on at the moment?
I think it varies. Each of our donors is actually, not much aligns them. I mean, sometimes when you look at our output, you'll think, oh, is there a big move to the arts? But actually, we would have been involved in a very big capital build, for example, in an art centre in France in that particular year. I would say humanitarian aid is quite high on the agenda, given world crises and wars are raging. And also climate change is developing, and more so perhaps with the next generation. So, you know, we have also some younger philanthropists whose agenda may be not necessarily totally different from their parents' generation, but actually they want to be more active within the charities and with what they're supporting, and less distant. So that's sometimes good for a charity, but not always. You know, it depends who they are. You know, it can be fantastic to have that kind of additional skill, and on the other hand, it's got to be a fit as well.
Yeah, well, definitely. So, you know, as we sort of, in summary, what are your aims and goals then, let's say, for the next 5 to 10 years with Prism?
So we just will continue. We want to continue to facilitate and encourage those that are giving to give more, those that haven't started their journey to give. My language is everyone has a responsibility to give. We cannot rely on the government. So whatever level anyone can give, they should. Obviously, at Prism's market, it's very high net worth individuals. And the other point, we do get quite a few legacies, but actually you will always gain more than you give. So give in life. As my mum says, warm money is much more interesting than cold money. And you will gain more than you give. And a legacy is as well as, not instead of. And honestly, it opens up people's lives.
Yeah. Really beautiful. Well, I mean, congratulations again for all you've done. I mean, over the last 20 years, gosh, what's going to happen in the next 20 years is absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much, Anna, for sharing all of your wisdom and experience. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close?
Well, obviously, we're delighted to answer questions or help anyone if they're beginning their journey. And we do work with strategic philanthropists. And obviously, we work with people like you guys. So, you know, there's a strong, interesting network of you know, lots of organizations and smart people out there that we're connected to and we can help introduce.
Incredible. Well, thank you, Anna. And thank you to everybody for either joining us live or watching us on the replay. As Anna says, she's very happy to answer any questions you might have, to educate you or connect you on your philanthropy journey. So yeah, thank you once again, Anna, and congratulations on all you're doing with Prism.
Thank you, Lottie. Thanks so much.
Thank you. See you soon. Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.